What are some uniquenesses about people that you find? What are the kind of people who get successful? What are the kind of people who don't get successful? What are some of the things of people that stand out for you?
Right. So I think in people, there are two parts, right? There is skill and there is will, right? What I've seen and I fundamentally believe is that uh, anyone who has the will and the intent to do well will go a far way in life, right? Skill is something which can be acquired, which can be learned. It is something which can be brought from the market, right?
Hi, welcome to another podcast of The Angry Coach. Today, I have with me Rahul Nagpal. And Rahul has brings us a very interesting personality. Rahul, an engineer and an MBA from SP Jain. Subsequent to that, he's had a career in investment banking as well as in consulting till he decided to shift gears very significantly and move over into Work India. He's been handling P&L responsibilities. He's leading the business. If I'm not mistaken, 4+ years now. Is that correct, Rahul?
That's it, almost 5 years. Yeah.
Almost 5 years. And Rahul today is the Chief Operating Officer at Work India. It's something the title just does not seem to fit his very young, very energetic face. Rahul, glad to have you on the Angry Podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Vivek, for this opportunity. Really glad to be a part of this.
So, this is one thing I'm very curious about, Rahul. SP Jain, JP Morgan, PwC, and Work India. How do these things stitch together?
Right. Right. So I'll just step back in my career and explain about my journey. So academically, I did my engineering first, right? As a young 12th grad pass out, I was very curious about machines. That's where I started, right? And electronic board chips really fascinated me. I thought my life is going to be electronics and I'm going to be an amazing electronics engineer. That was one myth I had about my career, right? So I ventured into engineering, picked up electronics and telecom as a branch, and slowly started developing an interest into finance, right? I cleared a couple of NCFM modules, cleared CFA level 1, and finance really intrigued me. And I again then thought my career was meant to be in finance and got an opportunity with an investment bank, which is JP Morgan. Uh, and I did investment banking for a couple of years, right? Uh, when I actually ventured into investment banking, Vivek, I realized that uh, there was a lot of core finance stuff which was there, which did intrigue me, but a very little understanding about the business itself, right? And that part got me curious and running. How do businesses work? Fundamentally, how do they make money? How do they make profits? How does the actual business work in reality, right? And that got me thinking, and that was the main trigger for me going into an MBA, right? And I picked up SP Jain uh, uh, as the college, did my MBA, and that is where businesses really intrigued me. And the natural course, and typically a lot of people do prefer that, was then went into consulting, right? Joined PwC, had a decent stint there. Uh, Although my business instinct was satisfied by PwC and consulting per se, right? But what was missing in PwC, what I realized was two things, right? Execution, hardcore execution was something which I wasn't able to do. And second was ownership. I did not have a lot of ownership to what I was doing, right? The work was driven top down, which is typically how it works in any organization. And I was a part of the organization, right? My impact was limited. That is where I got an opportunity and had a conversation with Kunal, right? And around 5 years ago, became a part of the Work India team. So that was my journey from finance to consulting to a startup, and primarily driven by a urge about businesses and hardcore execution and making that impact, right? And that is where the journey actually happened.
Very interesting. So your instinct towards execution kind of shifted you from a consulting career onto the Work India space. Is that correct?
That's right.
Um, Typically, I have a lot of young people who come to me and who want to make this shift, perhaps into a startup or into starting off on their own. But there's always this fear: what if it doesn't work out? What is my equity in the market? Things like that. Did you go through this kind of a decisioning process within yourself? How were the conversations like then?
No, no, absolutely. I would say, Vivek, I would be lying if I say I did not have that fear. I absolutely had that, right? But see, at that time, what I kept on telling myself, the thought process, the conversations I had with myself was what will be the worst thing which will happen, right? Maybe I'll venture into a company, it wouldn't work out. I'll maybe step back and do something else again, right? Maybe consulting, maybe some other corporate would be always there for me. So at that time, my confidence in myself, my belief in myself was the biggest driving factor. बस तू लाइफ में कुछ कर सकता है ना, ठीक है, गिरेंगे तो उठ के फिर से करेंगे, why not, right? So that was the biggest driving factor, and I kept on having these conversations with myself. Of course, my support system, my parents, my friends, bounced off the ideas to them. But I think the 80-20 would be the belief. I believed in myself and said, what worst can go? What worst can happen, right? In the worst case, it will not work out and I'll come back. That's okay. At least I'll have an amazing learning experience, right? So that is what was driving me and has driven me so far.
So you had a very strong internal belief, which told you that, hey, even if I fail, what's the worst that can happen? I can always bounce back. So that internal strength within yourself kind of propelled you forward. Of course, you did look at some logic around it. There was some rational thought that went in. But what I'm hearing from you is dominant 80% was this internal belief.
That's absolutely correct.
And I would agree with you so much, right? I remember long time back when I moved on from my role at Transform Solution onto my own organization. It was this internal belief. So, Rahul, I'll spend a little time on this because this is something very unique that you brought in as well. Um, what was that internal belief? And if a young person were to come to you and say, I want to build that internal belief, how could that person build that belief?
So, Vivek, I'll answer the second one first, right? So typically, see, the mind has a lot of unstructured thoughts. A lot of things keep popping up, right? So one practice which helped me was a typical practice called as mind dump, right? So I just put down whatever was happening in the mind onto a piece of paper, right? Completely unstructured. जो भी मन में आ रहा था बस लिखते जा right? Now, when that happens, right, I noticed a thing which I've read also in multiple books that suddenly all the thoughts which were completely unstructured and seemed very fuzzy started to get meaning out of it, right? So the very fact that I'm coming and saying what's the worst can happen, right, that did not come in one day. It took me a couple of months for me to arrive at that one statement, right? So writing it down helped me a lot. And second thing which typically helped me, Vivek, was reflection, right? I went back to my stages in my life when I was faced with similar situation, right? So for example, and my journey has been an example of that, right? So post engineering, venturing into finance, post finance, venturing into consulting. Right? All those points, everyone in life, I'm sure, would face such situations where I reflected back and thought, okay, what did I do at that time? What was my thought process then? And what happened? Eventually, what was the outcome? What was the worst thing which happened? Right? I went into investment banking, did not like it, but amazing 2 years. I learned a lot. Then switched, right? Again, went into consulting, did not work out for me. Again, switched, right? So my experiences were a testament to the fact that, boss, you can move on. It's okay. You can take that plunge, right? And secondly, writing down the current thoughts in a completely unstructured manner. These two things were the core components of me helping me to form the belief, right? And eventually, yes, taking the plunge and then fast forward now, I'm saying it's not that bad. The third opportunity in the career, first didn't work, second didn't work, third is working, right? Hopefully, it is going to work for a long time, right? Yeah. So that's how the belief thought process went.
Very interesting. And you had two very good things. I'm going to learn both of them right now. The first thing that you mentioned was just write down whatever is coming to your brain whenever you are in an unstructured mode. So there are infinite number of thoughts that keep happening versus letting them happen on your brain. Just write them all down. Correct. And what
Absolutely.
I'm hearing from you and from your practical experience of this process is that the brain automatically will then start uniting the thoughts and start forming a structure and a pattern around them. And that gives you direction and that builds belief.
That's right.
That was one. The second thing that I learned from you is diversity of experiences helps a lot. So you were in different situations and you went through different situations. So a certain innate confidence starts getting built up that, hey, I can, I survived that. So, hey, what worse can happen after that, right? And then you get on to the next thing. And that builds that muscle within you.
That's correct. That's
Does
right.
this belief system and does this belief pattern still serve you?
Oh, absolutely. Day in and day out, right? And not only the career is one aspect. See, we as humans we are faced with multiple decisions to take, right? At every juncture when we are going to take a decision, be it in a daily professional life, daily personal life, right? Exact these two thought processes or the systems which I mentioned do help me, right? So, for example, I'm looking at the numbers, P&L, right? One day they're up, the other day they're not. Maybe they're not trending the same every day, right? How do we bounce back? How do we come out of that situation, right? Again, just putting down all my thoughts as to what can go wrong, what is going wrong, how can I make it better? And then second, reminding me that was WorkIndia as an organization has had a completely roller coaster ride, right? Ups and downs, uh, and then the journey and coming out of it, right, gives us a lot of confidence on a daily basis that yes, boss, we can achieve it and eventually reach the purpose of providing meaningful livelihoods to the 25.8 crore blue collar in India.
Very interesting. So, what I'm hearing from you is not just in the critical junctures of your career, in everyday execution, also this pattern works well for you. So, you'd make it a point to just write down all your unstructured thoughts, let it form a pattern, and then good answers start emerging right from there. Uh, of course, you carry the belief, and this belief serves you even though the organization continues to go through a roller coaster. But as long as you remain focused on what you want to get out of it, the belief system keeps working for you.
That's it.
You've risen up to the rank of a chief operating officer at Work India, and I know you joined as an AVP in this particular organization, right? Um, what are some factors that you think led to this fast trajectory of career? I know a lot of people would want to be CEOs of an organization. What are some factors that led to this career trajectory?
Sure. So, Vivek, I would say a couple of them, right? First one is putting in the number of hours, perseverance, right? I fundamentally believe that although smart work is the buzzword and everyone wants to do that, but there is no substitute to hard work, right? Only and only when you put in the number of hours and actually go deeper into problem statements, understand, uh, help yourself evolve as a person, right? Only and only then will you be able to, uh, expand your horizon. So I would say the first factor is surely hard work, right? Just get down there, put your head down and just do the work, right? Do the work for 10, 12 hours a day, keep learning more and more, and get better as an individual. Um, Second, I would say is typically having a lot of cadences, right? So as an organization, which I've picked this up from Book India, uh, we have a lot of uh, cadences. So let me explain what I mean, right? So doing small, unsexy things over a period of time, again and again and again and again, leads to massive results. So there's this book called as Compounding Effect, written by Darren Hardy, right? And they beautifully explain this concept that just keep on doing the same thing again and again and again and again, and you see massive compounding results, right? So, for example, at Work India, our cadence of looking at numbers, right? So we look at numbers daily, every day, the entire leadership team at 10:15 a.m. in the morning, every day, right? So we all gather as a group, we put on the numbers at a screen, there's a set format, and everyone goes through each and every number, right? Now, looking at it daily may not sound that sexy, right? एक दिन में इतना क्या ही change हो जाएगा? But merely by building that cadence, everyone is now tuned to A coming in at that time, B first thing is looking at the numbers in the morning. B deriving some insights and conclusions as to what can happen, what maybe went wrong yesterday, what should we be on a lookout for, right? So these small habits, I think, goes a long way. And I'll mention one more point, which is taking on a lot of ownership, right? Ownership is one of our core values at Work India. And so, me as an individual, again, and as a firm, we strongly believe that uh, every part of the work you do, right from an engineer to let's say a senior business leader, you have to own that part. It's You're running a startup within a startup. You're running a company within the company. It's your company. It's your baby. It's your business, right? And you have to own it that way, right? So I'd say these 3 points, right? A, perseverance. B, building those habits, doing the same things again and again, and C, ownership. I would say these three would be the core reasons why I have got to where I have.
I think they're very fantastic and totally unrelated. But I was watching a podcast of Charlie Munger today in the morning. He's a partner in Berkshire Hathaway, and he mentioned exactly similar points, right? So the first thing that he mentioned is the sheer odds. Because you can be a genius of whatever kinds on the planet, but you have to put in the hours. Okay. You can be a dumb person, but if you put in the hours, you'll actually become better as compared to a genius who just doesn't put in the hours, right? It pays to be a genius, but that apart, hard work. So that's very fair. And exactly to this point, Cadence, right? Every day you've got to do exactly the same boring stuff. So you've got to pour over details, you've got to look at details. He had a third element, which was sheer luck. And it says you just have to have a factor of luck which always plays in. I like the ownership because in a startup environment, the ownership is the most important one. So I think all the successes have these common elements always there together.
Absolutely.
Uh, I'm going to shift gears with you, Rahul, and thank you so much for sharing this. And I'm going to come towards Work India. Tell us about your organization. Tell us about the fantastic work that you're doing through Work India.
Sure. So, as always, we start with this mission statement. Work India exists to provide meaningful livelihood to 25.8 crore blue collar in India. That's the purpose of existence, and that's the reason why Work India exists, right? Now, as an organization, Work India is nothing but a job marketplace. We strive to provide jobs to the blue collar workers. We have the blue collar workers on the one side of the marketplace and SMBs, which are small and medium businesses, on the other side, right? And as an organization, we have more than 30 million blue collar workers registered on our platform, more than 3 million businesses, SMBs registered, and eventually matchmaking and providing the job to the blue collar worker is what really uh, is the reason why we exist and why the company exists, right? That's about Work India in a nutshell.
And that's a very fair statement, correct. Um, what are some, how is it to run this business? Is it, I know it's a lot of people. What's their level of adoption of technology? Your clients, what is their level of adoption of technology? Because it's that, so pretty much everywhere, India is like the top 3%, right? And everybody's trying to sell to that top 3% only, and everybody forgets the rest of the 97%. Clearly, you're expanding that top 3% and getting into the next perhaps 10%, if not the 90%. So, how is it like serving this audience?
Right. So, from a technological adoption standpoint, like over a journey of last 8 years, we have seen two major shifts where penetration and adoption both have come in, right? So, the advent of Geo smartphones, which came up in somewhere around 2017, 2018, that had a massive penetration in this. A lot of people were using non-internet phones, not smartphones, right? Shifted to smartphones because smartphones became super cheap. And not only the smartphones, but the data which came along with it, right? The access to internet became super cheap. So that was one phenomenon where we saw that this entire segment had a huge, the penetration of internet and smartphones was one major factor. And second, when we came to COVID, post-COVID, right, post 2020, we saw a huge adoption of the penetration which had happened already, right? uh, a lot of people started looking out for jobs via the smartphone, which let's say was increasing at a slow pace. The pace became really really rapid. We saw a huge surge in uh, mere search words of finding a job, work India as a keyword, right? We could see that spike. Right? So let's say from a technological adoption standpoint, already more than 3 million people, 30 million people, more than 3 crore of this workforce has already downloaded the app, right? And they use it for finding a job. So from an adoption standpoint, I think this industry has come a far way ahead in the last 8 years. When the company started out in 2015, we were kind of building for the future, and the right event in the right place has helped us, you know, get get to where we are. So luck does play a factor. Right? That's right. Yeah. So
I think that's very fair. COVID was this very big event that just accelerated the adoption of technology in so many new user bases. Uh,
absolutely.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Um, I'm going to shift towards our last part given the time. Rahul, as a chief operating officer, you're essentially a lot in the people business. I mean, you as such are in the people business. What are some uniquenesses about people that you find? What are the kind of people who get successful? What are the kind of people who don't get successful? What are some of the things of people that stand out for you?
Right. So I think in people, there are two parts, right? There is skill and there is will, right? What I've seen and I fundamentally believe is that uh, anyone who has the will and the intent to do well will go a far way in life, right? Skill is something which can be acquired, which can be learned. It is something which can be brought from the market, right? But will is something which is very intrinsic to the person. Right? It depends a lot on the ambition, passion, the desire to put in the hours. So what I've seen is that people who are really intentful, right? And when I say intent, I'll break it down into a couple of components, right? Discipline, right? Valuing time, coming on time, getting your outputs delivered on time, taking extreme ownership, right? Treating everything as your own, right? And making things move fast quickly. That's one of our core values of bias for action, getting things done, right? So I feel that all of them I would club it as intent, right? And I've seen that people who show this positive intent go a long, long way in life, and I hope to be on the right side of it and be one of them.
So, skill will matrix is an important aspect. And what I'm hearing from you is that will plays a larger role as compared to skill because skill can still be learned, it can be acquired, and a person with the right will easily be able to build the right skill, not the other way around. A person with the right skill might not have that right will. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Very fair. As you were scaling up the organization, what are some other people challenges that you faced?
Right. So, I think Vivek, the the single most biggest challenge as an organization when we were scaling, we faced was maintaining our culture, right? So
Maintaining the culture.
that's right. So basically, when we started off as a highly passionate 6 to 8 individuals, right? But in 2019, we were a core team of around 8 to 10 people till 2019. From 2019 to now, fast forward today, we are a team of more than 900 folks, right? Now, in a team of 8 to 10 people, the people share their ideologies, right? Everyone is passionate, everyone is thinking about the problem statement, etc., right? And fast forward to 900 people, how do you percolate those values uh, to all of them? How do you actually explain it to everyone that was providing meaningful livelihood is a super important item for us? We truly, truly believe in ownership, right? So maintaining the culture, the core ideologies, right, which the founding team has been the single most difficult challenge which we have faced during scale at Work India.
Let me get the numbers right. You mentioned from 2019, where you were a team of 8, 9 people, to now, which is end of 23, you're a team of 900 people.
That's
That
right.
is some massive growth. Congratulations on this. And what I'm also hearing from you is maintaining culture is this one challenge as more and more people join you. So, what's been the Work India playbook in this space?
Right. So, firstly, I'll humbly admit that we still have a long way to go. We're learning as an org, right? But so one thing, so there's two things broadly which, as a leadership group, we decided, right? One was we have to lead by example. Culture has to be seen and not just taught. Right? It has to be seen. It has to be demonstrated. So if I'm saying that, hey, ownership is one of our core values at Work India, and let's say the core group of leadership team members do not display them, or is there's any lacks in displaying the core value of ownership, it'll never get populated, right? Right? If one of our core values again is nothing is impossible, right? So if how the leadership typically behaves in impossible situations when we are faced with, let's say, cash crunches or when we're on the verge of getting shut down, right? How do we behave? How do we, as a group, uh, decide, discuss, and then take on the war is super important. So that was one. Second, what we understood was, although leading by example is good, but you can't typically lead by example to 900 people, right? So we decided that we need to have a culture manifesto, right? So what we did as a group, Vivek, was that we spent a couple of months, right? Typically on Saturdays, where as a group, the leadership team met, and we just wrote down what matters to us, why are we here, right? Every person would have a different meaning to their work, right? Uh, and over a period of 3 to 4 months, multiple rounds of this exercise as to what matters to us, what would matter to Work India, what can make Work India great, etc. We came up with a set of ethos, a set of core values, and seven of them, right? And 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 this was built ground up by the leadership team. This was not told to us by someone. It was built ground up by us, right? So we had a very strong sense of belief in them. Right? And once these set of core values were established, then there were multiple ways of actually then percolating these values, right? So, for example, in office we have a culture wall where the seven core values are displayed in a circle. Right? That's one. Second, we talk about the core values before every meeting. Every meeting which is 30 minutes and above, there'll be the purpose statement and all the core values, right? And as the third thing, for example, was for rewards and recognition. When we are appreciating people, we started associating every appreciation to a core value and started giving them value cards. So we have physical cards, example in office, right? Where if a person has demonstrated nothing is impossible, a person will pick up the card, sign, write the name of the person, and hand it over to them, right? So a few methods which are using to try and percolate all of these values down. But yeah, broadly leading by example and having a set of uh, core values which the core leadership team truly believes in, I would say are the two things which we have experimented in Work India.
And they're great examples. I would completely agree with you. So, uh, scaling the culture is a very big, is one of the biggest things, right? And then you worked on first demonstrating it your own self and leading by example. And the second one that I understood from you is making the culture elements a part of everyday vocabulary of people. So, be it through cards, be it through a wall, be it through a manifesto, so that it just remains with people is something that you felt worked well. Is that correct?
That's correct.
It's a very important thing. Correct. I would hear you. I'm going to probe you a little further on this one, Rahul. What are some other people challenges that you faced?
Sure. So I'll just take a minute to think on this and then continue.
Mm, absolutely, absolutely.
Right. So Vic, in terms of a few other challenges in terms of people, right? We are facing at Work India. It's a upskilling our individuals. right? So what do I mean by that is, so WorkIndia or any other startup, as a matter of fact, will be a very fast-paced organization. Things will be moving very quickly, right? And the typical saying, right? What got you here will not get you there, right? People start off with a set of skill sets, right? And very quickly, in this dynamic uh, startup environment, things change very quickly, right? So, for example, someone who is doing core operations might have to do sales, right? Similarly, someone doing product might have to get involved with business and look at numbers, right? So people have to evolve. One of the core challenges, Vivek, which we've been facing in terms of people is how do we help people to upskill and keep up with our pace? Not only people, but we as a leadership group as well. And how do we constantly keep evolving? How do we evolve, right? How do we make people ready for the warfront which is coming in the future, right? So that's one of the core challenge, I would say, which we have been facing.
That's a fair one. That's a very, very fair one. And my next question would be, what are some things that you have experimented with on this one?
Sure. And again, I humbly admit that we'll be far away from where we want to be. But a few things, what we have realized, Vivek, is that so as an individual, right, reflection is a very important metric, right? So if a person steps back and thinks and spends time alone, right, he or she will be able to understand what are the gaps which the person is facing, right? And once an individual realizes the gap, I'm sure there is intent and will, there will be a solution, right? Whether the solution would be taking a external course or hiring a coach, etc., would depend, right? So a few things in this matter which we have done, Vivek, is A, we have started constant reflection practices. So as a leadership team and all the different teams, once in a month we sit together as a team and we talk about all these challenges in a group, in small groups, right? What this does is it unearths your inner thoughts and people come to know what the challenges are, right? Second, we have experimented with hiring professional coaches, right? Uh, Professional people who are far ahead from us in this curve, right? And who have faced these challenges already, right? Those people would be able to guide us with their experiences. And third, Vivek, we try and reach out to all those experts uh, who have again done this in their field. So, for example, a product manager facing an issue with a particular product part. Let's say this has been solved by mature companies like Swiggy and Flipkart, right? So we reach out to them on LinkedIn through our common connects and try and connect with them one on one, right? In this manner, we already come to know what they have done. They would have gone through the same cycle, right? And it basically buys us time. All of us are fighting to buy time here, right? And do get things done quickly. So these are the few best practices which have helped us. Again, long way to go, but we keep on constantly experimenting.
These are great ones. Self reflection is a fantastic exercise. Love this idea of using professional coaches towards grooming your talent up, and it's quite an investment as well. Also, love the thoughts that you have around reaching out to people who've already done that and bringing that outside in very effectively into your organization.
Right.
Rahul, you have shared some of the very core challenges, people challenges that organizations face, right? And I can speak with a lot of conversations with leaders, whether you're a young organization, whether you're a scaling organization, or whether you're a large enterprise. The nature of these challenges, while it keeps evolving, remains to a certain extent very similar. Okay. The one thing that every leader tells me, the one thing that every leader tells me is the skill will matrix. Okay. And everybody tells me the same thing. You know what, Vivek, we have learned you can always hire for skill, you can always groom for skill. Plenty of right courses available. It is the will element which is the determining factor for success.
Absolutely.
And a challenge that they used to all share with me is, but how do I check for will when I'm hiring an individual? Right? Skill you can check, correct? You give a person a Java code to write, you give them something to solve, you question them on that, let's say, sales strategy or marketing strategy or anything else. But how do you check for will? Because in an interview, everybody is just going to give you the answer that you want to hear, right?
That's right.
Any sec- any secret recipe, any secret sauce there?
Right. So Vivek, over here, what we have realized is being absolutely transparent, right, and just opening up in front of the candidate in terms of who we are, right, really helps us. Yeah. So what do I mean by that is, see, a lot of companies position themselves, right? So there'll be, okay, boss, there'll be a 5 day work week. Yes, you'll be able to leave at 7. Uh, Weekend पे काम बिल्कुल ही नहीं होगा, ऐसा होगा, वैसा होगा, right? And there's a lot of ifs and buts added because everyone wants to sell, everyone wants the best talent to join. The strategy which we have adopted and tried is we are absolutely transparent. Boss, it's going to be 10 to 12 hours a day. You have to slog it off. There might be work on the weekends, whatever is the relevant, applicable, transparent form of actual thing which is happening on the ground, right? They're very, very open and candid with the candidate on the other side. And what we have heard as a feedback, of course, some people do want to sign up for this, some don't, right? But we really get a lot of appreciation for this fact that was very candid. You've given me a picture. We also encourage people to talk to not only people present in Work India today, but also ex people, people who have left Work India, right? And have a honest conversation with them and just understand what we are, right? So from our end, we will do our best to give all the information very candidly to the person on the other end. And then it's for him or her to subscribe or not subscribe. And we're happy with either of the two outcomes. It has to be a win-win for both the candidate and for the company.
Fantastic. I'd completely agree with you. So, what I'm hearing from you is a very high transparency. You wouldn't try to mask the organization culture with words intended to make a person join. Instead, you will state it the way it is, and that helps you get the right will. Hmm. Another organization that I work with shared that they've started using a lot of database psychometrics to look at the will, and they figured out that what makes top talent in their organization and see anybody new, what's the close match. Any ideas, any thoughts around this one?
Yes, so this one is a little new at WorkIndia, but we have experimented with this. So there's a strengths-based test called as Clifton's 34 strengths test, right? So step one, we did it ourselves as a leadership team, right, to identify what are our top 5 strengths, how are we complementing each other, etc. Right? And as an experiment, we have tried this also. We facilitate this for the candidate. We arrange for the Clifton's 34 strengths test, and then again we have a candid conversation with the strengths open, right? Let's say the core strengths of the leadership team and the person joining in, if the person is at the leadership role, and we have an as is conversation because this is how it is. This is where we feel you'll be a great fit, which sounds amazing, and this is where we feel maybe you might not be a great fit, and very open in telling that as well, right? But I'll again say that we have only tried it out, and it's very very new at Book India, uh, typically a couple of quarters old, right? And maybe we'll learn about this and use this in one of our hiring processes as well.
Sounds like a very, very good idea, Rahul. Rahul, I'm pretty much run out of time with you over here. In fact, I've gone over the time with you. It's been such a fantastic conversation. Before I let you go, I've got one more question for you.
Sure.
If you were to share the top 3 success mantras that you have experienced with the audience out there, what would your top 3 success mantras be?
Sure. Vic, so my top 3 mantras would be A, uh, is put your head down and work, hard work. There is absolutely no substitute for hard work. I've seen this with myself, with my people I've been working with all of my friends, family members, etc. Just put in the number of hours. So A, perseverance. B, which has worked beautifully for me, is uh, uh, the compound effect, right? So do the same thing, small, unsexy items may not sound very fancy at this point of time. Just keep doing them. Build a habit out of them. Once you wire your brain to keep doing those things, the results will be massive. And you truly see a compound effect kicking in, right? And third would be whatever you're doing in life, personally or professionally, do it with utmost level of ownership. It's your own thing. Treat it like your own thing, right? Everything in whatever you're doing. It high ownership generates a lot of belief in a person, and the output comes out really well. These would be the three success mantras from my
I think these would be really, really great points. Love the hard work element, love the same things again and again, the compounding effect element as well. I think it's a very important part of my life as well. Rahul, for your thoughts and for this time, thank you so much. It's been a delight and a pleasure having you with us today.
Thank you, Vivek. It was a pleasure talking with you. Thank you very much for inviting me.